our deepest respect for the soldiers who suffered. For the soldiers who lost their lives as they marched more than 60 miles from Bataan to Tarlac during the infamous Death March. For the thousands who never saw the light at the end of the tunnels in Corregidor. For those whose lives and families were changed forever by war. And of course, our deepest respect for the veterans who are here today. Veterans who come regularly and whose numbers have dwindled over the years. On behalf of a grateful nation, I wish to recognize the veterans present here today and their families. We are privileged to not have to see what you had seen, to not have ingrained in our memories what you had to go through. May we continue to deserve living and thriving in this world that you have built for us.
His Excellency, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and the official party. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Good afternoon. On behalf of the American Battle Monuments Commission, welcome to the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Manila, here at the Manila American Cemetery and Memorial. My name is Vicente Lim IV, the Manila American Cemetery's Visitor Center Director and today's Master of Ceremonies. We are gathered here to honor the brave American and Filipino servicemen and women, guerrillas, as well as countless civilians who sacrificed their lives during one of the most critical and devastating battles of the Second World War, the battle for the liberation of Manila. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the posting of the colors, the Philippine and American national anthems, and the invocation of the chaplain.
March the colors! Present arms! Order! Arms! Post the colors!
This special petal drop and flyover is thanks to the 505th Search and Rescue Group, Philippine Air Force, and the pilots and crew of WWII number 890. Major Buksit and First Lieutenant Armendi, pilots, Sergeants Belan and Bitong, air crew, Technical Sergeants Domingo and Panambo, jump masters. Please remain standing for the invocation by Commander James C. Reagan III, Deputy Force Chaplain, United States Marine Corps, Forces Pacific.
Good afternoon. I invite you to pray with me. Everlasting God who heals the brokenhearted and illuminates the darkness, we ask for your presence among us as we pause and remember the men and women forever impacted by the battle of the liberation of Manila. It is hard for us who stand in this place 80 years removed to imagine the horrors of that battle, the devastation of this beautiful city, and the tragic loss of so many lives. However, despite the carnage of warfare and the pain that was so prevalent, it is awe-inspiring seeing how good so often finds a way to shine through. Today, we remember the countless people who risked everything to help their neighbors in need. We remember heroes like Josefina Guerrero, who selflessly aided the wounded and protected children during the battle. We remember promises kept as General Douglas MacArthur returned with the weight of the U.S. military to help fight for the liberation of the Philippines. We remember sacrificial love embodied by people like Chaplain Thomas McKnight, who gave his life so that others might live and now lies here at Plot G, Row 7, Grave 45. We remember the bond forged between the United States and the Philippines, one in which we will always stand shoulder to shoulder during times of peace and conflict. Today, God, we remember. And because of this, we stand here grateful, thankful for that this horrible war came to an end, for the enduring partnership between the Philippines and the United States, for the close relationships we now have with our partners and allies in the Indo-Pacific, and that you redeemed the death and destruction that existed in this place by bringing forth life, peace, and partnership. May our time together rightly honor all this well, and all those who made the ultimate sacrifice, who we pray rest in peace as part now of the sacred ground of this city, the Manila of our affections. And it's in your holy name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Reagan. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. It is both a privilege and an honor to introduce our first speaker this afternoon. Please join me in welcoming Secretary Charles K. Dejoux of the American Battle Monuments Commission, who will now deliver the welcome remarks.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, Ambassador Carlson, World War II veterans, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Manila American Cemetery. It has been my honor and privilege to serve as the Secretary of the ABMC, the American Battle Monuments Commission. My agency runs the 26 American military cemeteries and 31 American military memorials spread across 17 countries around this world. outside the United States. Of all the sites that my agency manages, this site, the Manila American Cemetery, is my agency's and the United States of America's largest, both in terms of the number that we recognize as well as in its size. Today we recognize and celebrate the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Manila. We recognize and celebrate the service and sacrifice of both Americans and Filipinos. We recognize individuals such as Mildred Harper, whose photo is to my right and behind you to your left. And when the Japanese occupation took place here in the Philippines, she was only 14 years old. She was sent to an internment camp at San Tomas. And during the liberation of Manila, she was freed. But immediately after being freed, went to sea and tried to find her family and was tragically cut down by an artillery shell. She is memorialized here at this cemetery. We also recognize Filipinos, like Brigadier General Vicente Lum, the first Filipino to graduate from the United States Military Academy at West Point, and upon the Japanese invasion served side by side, shoulder to shoulder with the American forces, and after the Japanese occupation led the Filipino resistance against Japanese rule. He was sadly and tragically captured and died in captivity. His body was never found, but he is remembered and recognized here at this site at our Wall of the Missing. And I raise these individuals like Ms. Harper and like General Lim because they connect our past with our present. Ms. Harper, who died here in Manila during the Battle of Manila, died at the same age as my youngest daughter, who is joining us here today at age 17. And General Lim, who is recognized here, a Filipino, connects us here with the present because his great-grandson, Vicente Lim IV, works here on staff with the ABMC, and he is your MC today for this particular event. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know there are many who continue to wonder, who question, who doubt, and ask whether or not ceremonies and places like this really matter, who ask whether or not the United States of America really truly is any different with the Filipinos and the Philippines than the Spanish Empire or Imperial Japan or the Communist Party of China. To all who question and wonder and doubt, I respond to you, come. Come here. Come to the Manila American Cemetery. Come to this soil on the Philippines. Come and see these crosses, these names on the Wall of the Missing surrounding all of you. Come and see that the United States buries all those who made the ultimate sacrifice without regard to rank. Generals are buried next to privates. Without regard to religion, Protestants, Catholics, Jews, Hindus, Muslims are buried side by side. And without regard to race. Walk among these crosses, walk among these walls of the missing, and you shall see that Filipinos who served and sacrificed alongside us Americans are recognized as equals. There is no distinction. All are treated equally. And if you doubt that America is different, is not any different from all these other powers, I say to you, come here to this cemetery. Come here and recognize that when the United States of America sends its young, its brave, its finest to fight, we do not fight for a king or a crown. We do not fight for a sect or denomination. We do not even fight for a motherland or a fatherland. The United States instead, when we go and fight, we fight for the values of freedom and democracy. And when the job is done, when the mission is accomplished, when we have taken down the authoritarian and the dictator and stood up democracy, America does something utterly unique in the history of mankind. We go home. All that America asks for in return is a few small plots of land to bury our dead. All of you are seated here in one of those small plots of land. And so I remind all of you, all Filipinos, all Americans, but most especially of all authoritarians here in this world, whether they be in Beijing or Moscow, whether they be in Pyongyang or Tehran, that the most powerful weapon system known to mankind was, is, and shall forever be not a Shandong aircraft carrier patrolling the South China Sea. It is not the ability to build artificial islands in Filipino waters. It is not the ability to spread around money through a Belt and Road initiative. No. The most powerful weapon system known to mankind is a free people willing to fight for freedom. That is what this site is all about and what this ceremony is all about. Mabuhay Philippines, mabuhay the United States of America. May God bless each and every one of you, your families, the Philippines, and the United States of America. Salamat po. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Deju. Alongside their Filipino comrades in arms, the fight for Manila in 1945 primarily involved three divisions of the United States Army: the 37th Infantry Division, the 1st Cavalry Division, and the 11th Airborne Division. Behind me, you will see the three division guidons adorning the Memorial Chapel entrance as a sign of respect and reverence. When looking out into the plot areas and the walls of the missing, you'll notice only selected graves and names have been decorated with the American and Philippine flag in recognition of specific individuals who fell while liberating the capital city and the surrounding areas. 80 years ago, the area that now makes up the Manila American Cemetery was liberated by elements of the 11th Airborne Division. Today, the 11th Airborne, a multi-role unit based in Alaska, is the only division that took part in the liberation of Manila that still has a presence in the Pacific region. It is an honor to welcome the Arctic Angels back to these hallowed grounds. Thank you to Major General Joseph Hilbert, Commanding General of the 11th Airborne Division, and all the troops under his command present here today, to include the Joint Color Guard and the ceremonial firing detail. It is now my honor to introduce Lieutenant General Joel B. Vowell, Deputy Commanding General, United States Army Pacific.
President Marcos, Ambassador Carlson, Admiral Paparo, Secretary DeJow, Secretary Tesadoro, all of our Filipino national leaders, our service members, thank you for attending this ceremony today. But most importantly, I'd like to thank the living survivors and the reasons we're able to enjoy the liberty and freedoms we have today. Our Filipino and American veterans who have traveled from all parts of the globe, as far as New York City, to be here. Thank you for driving the boats, and thank you for securing the land that allowed us to be free. What we owe you is beyond evaluation. It's a profound honor to stand before you today, humbled by the opportunity to pay tribute to the courageous Filipinos and Americans who fought side by side during the battle in Manila, a turning point in the Pacific War. Before us lay nearly 500 U.S. Army soldiers who paid the highest price of freedom during the liberation of Manila and remain interred in these hallowed grounds, America's largest overseas cemetery. Soldiers from the storied 1st Cavalry Division, 11th Airborne Division, and 37th Infantry Division. Their selfless devotion to duty and country will never be forgotten and continues to inspire generations of Filipino and American soldiers who remain here together on the knife edge of freedom. The Philippines and the United States have a long and storied history of cooperation and mutual support marked by pivotal moments, such as General MacArthur's return to the Philippines in 1944, the liberation of Manila here in 1945, the signing of our Mutual Defense Treaty in 1951, and currently our Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement in 2012. Our mutual support is visible here today as our Arctic Angels, with their maroon berets all around us, the 11th Airborne Division, stand alongside their Filipino Army partners in recognition of our history of fighting and securing liberty together, just as they fought 80 years ago. And this is more important now than ever, as our current regional security environment is the most dangerous and challenging since together we secured those freedoms and liberty those 8 decades ago. Given that, and as we stand today upon this sacred ground, it is up to us to continue to preserve and earn those sacrifices of those who sweat, bled, and died for us to be here. We must live up to and protect their expectations of us, and we will stand together to protect our way of life and support a free and open Indo-Pacific. As we say in the Army, this we'll defend. My sincere thank you to you all.
Thank you, Lieutenant General Vowell. We are privileged to welcome Admiral Samuel J. Paparo, Commander, United States Indo-Pacific Command.
President Marcos, Ambassador Carlson, and most of all, veterans of the Luzon campaign, Arthur Grubiner and John Hodges, distinguished guests and friends. It's our honor to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Manila, a pivotal moment in the shared history between the United States and the Republic of the Philippines. The intense urban battle was a decisive moment in the Pacific theater of World War II and a testament of the unbreakable bond between our two nations. 80 years ago, American and Filipino forces fought side by side to reclaim Manila from Japan, resulting in the deaths of thousands of service members, all who lay all around us. Their courage, their sacrifice, and their tenacity paved the way for the Allied forces' triumph in the Pacific. Today, we honor those who fought and fell, and we remember the timeless values that define our alliance: democracy, freedom, and commitment to the rule of law. Our nations have stood together for decades, confronting common challenges and advancing shared interests in the Indo-Pacific. The United States has supported the Republic of the Philippines in democracy. We've responded together to natural disasters, and we've worked together to support a free and open regional order. And we both remain committed to the defense and security of the Philippines, and will continue to work together to deter aggression and uphold international law. The liberation of Manila was a triumph for the universal values of human dignity, self-determination, and the human spirit. Today, we honor the memory of those who gave their lives. Let us rededicate ourselves to the cause of freedom and our enduring partnership. May the sacrifices of our forebears inspire us to stand firm in the face of the challenges, and may our bonds of friendship and cooperation grow stronger in the years to come. May God bless the Republic of the Philippines and the United States of America. Thank you all.
Thank you, Admiral Paparo. Ladies and gentlemen, we now turn to a special message from Mr. Arthur MacArthur IV, the only child of General of the Armies Douglas MacArthur. Though unable to join us in person, Mr. MacArthur, who lives in New York, has written a statement that reflects his deep connection to the city of Manila and the Filipino people. Mr. Ryan C. Blum, Superintendent of the Manila American Cemetery and Memorial, will now read Mr. MacArthur's statement.
President Marcos, Ambassador Carlson, Admiral Paparo, dignitaries, and attendees, thank you for inviting me to be with you today on this 80th anniversary of the liberation of Manila and the Philippines. I wish I could be there once again in the land of my birth and your distinguished company. 80 years ago, at an emotional ceremony at Malacanan Palace in the midst of the battle for Manila, my father restored civil government to the Philippines under President Sergio Osmeña. It was only made possible by the sacrifice of tens of thousands of Filipinos dedicated to freedom and those Americans buried amongst you today at the Manila American Cemetery. On July 4th, 1961, my father visited what was then the Fort McKinley Cemetery, now the Manila American Cemetery. He said of those buried in this hallowed place, "I do not know the dignity of their birth, but I do know the glory of their death. They died unquestioning, uncomplaining, with faith in their hearts and on their lips the prayer that we would go on to victory." The commemoration in Manila brings into focus the promise made to the people of the Philippines that they would not be forgotten, but would be liberated in World War II. I join with the MacArthur Memorial and the General Douglas MacArthur Foundation in the wish of my father, General Douglas MacArthur, and my grandfather, Lieutenant General Arthur MacArthur. God bless the Philippines. Respectfully, Arthur MacArthur.
Thank you, Superintendent Blum. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Her Excellency Mary Kay L. Carlson, Ambassador of the United States to the Republic of the Philippines.
President Marcos, honored veterans, and distinguished guests, thank you for being here to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Manila. The hallowed grounds of the Manila American Cemetery and Memorial remind us of the extraordinary sacrifices made by so many during one of the most harrowing chapters of our nation's shared history. Today, we honor the courage of those who gave their lives to free Manila, many of whom lie here in eternal rest. Among the brave Americans who made the ultimate sacrifice during the liberation of Manila is Staff Sergeant Henry Stalker. He answered the call to duty, traveling from Illinois to fight for freedom on these shores. During the brutal battle for Manila, Staff Sergeant Stalker gave his life while protecting the lives of civilians recently liberated from the Bilibid POW camp. He now rests here in Plot A, Row 16, Grave number 157, a lasting testament to his valor and a reminder of the price paid by so many. Here also, amid rows of white crosses and stars of David, lie many Filipino heroes who fought valiantly in World War II. Sergeant Nicanor Marco, a Philippine scout, is one such hero. He survived brutal fighting on Bataan and the Death March, only to die in captivity. At the request of his widow, he was buried here in Plot B, Row 2, Grave 136, a memorial to his personal sacrifice and the shared suffering that forged strong bonds between the United States and.
These were young men who carried the burden of freedom at great personal cost. Amid this fierce fighting, 6 individuals were awarded the Medal of Honor, the highest award for military valor. These are their stories. On February 9th, 1945, Private First Class Joseph Cicchetti of the 37th Infantry Division entered the heavily defended Paco district of Manila, where enemy forces had fortified buildings into a deadly strong point. Under intense enemy fire, Cicchetti organized a litter team, rescuing 14 wounded men while braving a 400-yard route of relentless enemy gunfire. During one rescue, Cicchetti exposed himself to enemy fire, allowing his team to escape. Then, seeing a wounded comrade in the distance, Cicchetti ran to his aid and was struck by shell fragments. Valiantly, he carried the comrade to safety before collapsing. Cicchetti succumbed to his wounds, his selfless actions a lasting testament to extraordinary courage. He was 21 years old. Private First Class William Grabiars from Buffalo, New York, joined the Army as a scout with the 5th Cavalry Regiment of the 1st Cavalry Division. During the battle, his unit was advancing near the old customs building in Manila when they came under heavy enemy fire. His commanding officer, Captain John Gregory, was wounded in the fray and unable to move. Disregarding his own safety, Grabiars ran from behind cover to attempt to rescue Gregory and was himself wounded in the process. Unable to drag his commander any further, Grabiars bravely shielded Gregory with his own body as the enemy riddled him with concentrated fire. Grabiars, just 19 years old, would succumb to his wounds, but because of his selfless act, Captain Gregory survived. Private First Class Manuel Perez Jr. was a paratrooper in a 511th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 11th Airborne Division. On February 13th, 1945, Perez's unit encountered a fortified sector near Fort William McKinley. now part of the Manila American Cemetery. With blockhouses and bunkers halting the division's advance, Perez volunteered to charge forward, alone, armed only with grenades. He bravely cleared the way for his unit to move forward, destroying multiple machine gun nests and neutralizing 18 enemy soldiers. 1 month later, Perez was killed by a sniper during a firefight in southern Luzon. But his heroic actions on February 13th saved countless lives. He was 22 years old. Second Lieutenant Robert Viale from Bayside, California, served as a rifle platoon leader in the 37th Infantry Division. On February 5th, 1945, his platoon was caught in a raging firefight in the Binondo district of Manila. While leading his men's withdrawal, he encountered 3 enemy pillboxes blocking their escape. Under heavy fire, Viale crossed the bridge through grenade smoke, silencing the pillboxes with his team. As his platoon pushed ahead, Viale led an attack on the enemy emplacement. During the assault, he dropped a grenade due to wounds he sustained on his arm. Reacting swiftly, he pressed the grenade against his chest and absorbed the blast, protecting his men and nearby civilians. He was 28 years old. Technical Sergeant Cleto Rodriguez from San Marcos, Texas, and Private First Class John Reese Jr. of Pryor, Oklahoma, served together in the 37th Infantry Division. One of the most harrowing fights in the liberation of Manila was the assault on a Paco railroad station, fiercely defended by over 300 enemy troops. Advancing across an open field under enemy fire, Rodriguez and Reese's platoon was halted short of the station. The two then continued alone under intense enemy gunfire, eliminating more than 35 enemy combatants. Moving closer to the station, they discovered enemy reinforcements attempting to reach the pillboxes. At one point, Reese was struck down by enemy fire. He was 21 years old. Rodriguez continued on, destroying multiple machine guns and artillery with hand grenades. Their actions halted the enemy's advance, neutralized 40 additional enemy troops, and paved the way for the station's capture. Rodriguez was the only of the 6 to survive the war. These Medal of Honor recipients represents the courage, sacrifice, and valor of all who fought and fell during the Battle of Manila. As we stand upon these hallowed grounds, surrounded by thousands of men and women who gave their lives, we are reminded not just of their actions, but of the values they upheld. It is our duty to remember them, honor their legacy, and ensure that their sacrifice was not in vain, lest we forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Specialist Collins. We now call on His Excellency, Secretary of Foreign Affairs Enrique A. Manalo, to introduce our guest of honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the Republic of the Philippines, His Excellency Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Thank you to our Foreign Affairs Secretary, Secretary Ricky Manalo, the U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines, Her Excellency Mary Kay Carlson, and esteemed members of the Diplomatic Corps, National Defense Secretary Gilbert Chodoro Jr., and the honorable members of the Cabinet, American Battle Monuments Commission Secretary Charles Dew, Indo-PACOM Commander Admiral Samuel Paparo, our gallant heroes, the World War II veterans who are here with us today, fellow workers in government, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is with profound honor and gratitude that I join you all today in the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Manila. I wish to thank the U.S. Embassy for bringing us all together and in organizing today's program. The city of Manila, a bustling and modern metropolis known as the Pearl of the Orient, capitulated to the Japanese forces in early 1942, pushing the American forces to eventually surrender the Philippines to Japanese control. In the next 3 years, with the Americans gone, guerrilla forces all throughout the archipelago would continue to fight with resolve and often make the ultimate sacrifice with the goal of securing freedom for our motherland. Manila would be free again 3 years later, but at a significant cost. It would take almost a month of fierce urban combat, over 1,000 U.S. servicemen killed, more than 100,000 Filipino civilians' lives lost for Manila to finally be free. Many of those who fought for Manila's freedom were eventually interred in these hallowed grounds. In the end, Manila would be free, but unrecognizable. As the most devastated city in the Pacific, it could be easy for many of us to forget about the death and destruction in Manila at this difficult time in our history. Yet we are all here this afternoon, 80 years since the liberation of Manila and the end of the Second World War, honoring our veterans, all those who stood firm for democracy and for humanity. I would like to believe that even if we gather to commemorate the liberation of Manila year after year, as our predecessors before us, our deep respect has not faded, nor will it ever fade. Our deepest respect for the soldiers who suffered, for the soldiers who lost their lives as they marched more than 60 miles from Bataan to Tarlac during the infamous Death March, for the thousands who never saw the light at the end of the tunnels in Corregidor, for those whose lives and families were changed forever by war, and of course, our deepest respect for the veterans who are here today, veterans who come regularly and whose numbers have dwindled over the years. On behalf of a grateful nation, I wish to recognize the veterans present here today and their families. We are privileged to not have to see what you had seen, to not have ingrained in our memories what you had to go through. May we continue to deserve living and thriving in this world that you have built for us. Filipinos paid the highest price for democracy to be preserved and for democracy to flourish. Standing on this hallowed ground, we are reminded of our solemn duty to always do what is necessary to ensure that we bequeath a sovereign and proud country to future generations. The Philippines, deeply familiar with the atrocities brought about by war between and amongst nations, has always chosen the path of peace, and I can assure all of you that we will continue to do so. Through diplomacy, dialogue, and cooperation, we have successfully maintained a region that is peaceful, stable, and prosperous. We have and will continue to work with partners in the international community in building bridges, forging solutions, preserving our global commons. The Philippines will always make a stand and will always stand for what is right. In a world where the only thing that appears to be constant is change, we are thus gratified by our enduring alliance, our partnership and friendship with the United States, especially towards advancing our common agenda of peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. In peace and in war, through natural disasters and pandemics, Philippine-U.S. relations are firmly anchored on the values and principles that we cherish: peace, democracy, fairness, social progress, and justice. Our two nations are committed to the preservation and enhancement of national security, the attainment of economic prosperity, and the promotion of the rights and well-being of our peoples. Whether we gather, as we do today, to remember the liberation of Manila some 80 years ago, or during joint military exercises, as our armed forces will in a few weeks' time for Balikatan, there is no doubt that our relationship is robust, with our two countries continuing to work together to address common challenges. Let me end by noting that the Battle of Manila offers a lot of lessons and represents a great many opportunities. I am pleased to see many of the embassies joining us in this important event. I am sure that you will gain a better understanding of our country and our people in learning about our past. We are proud of our history and even prouder of the relationships and alliance that we have built over the many years. bound by our shared history and our common commitment to a region governed by rules, not by might, where the rights of countries, large or small, are respected. The Philippines recognizes challenges that lie ahead and is assured that we can continue to count on the help of friends, as we have done so over the last 80 years. It is truly an honor to stand with all of you today. Thank you for making the spirit of 1945 and the sacrifices of our forebears alive in our hearts today. As you later on leave these hallowed grounds, may I invite all of you to pause for a few moments of quiet remembrance for those who fought for our freedoms, for our democracy, our posterity. A few moments to remember, to honor, and to thank. May the light of their sacrifice, their nationalism, their love of country forever scatter the shadows of war, tyranny, and oppression. Thank you. Mabuhay po tayong lahat. Mabuhay ang Pilipinas.